Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Ha! Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, all that good stuff. And welcome to Joel.LIVE. I have to show you guys something right now. There is a guy rappelling past my window. There he goes. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I live in a high rise. Welcome to the replay, by the way. I live in a high rise, and they are replacing panels on the building because last year some of them blew off during some high winds, and they are going one by one. I woke up to having this guy on my balcony, and now they're rappelling up and down the building. So that's kind of fun that's happening. Okay, just doing a quick check on Facebook to make sure the stream has indeed kicked in. And it has kicked in, and glad to see you guys. Welcome to Joel.LIVE, where people are rappelling on up and down the building. If he goes by again, I'll turn the camera around and show you. Merry Christmas to you as well, Ron. If you guys are coming in right now, then please do share that this broadcast is live. I've got Bob Burg today. I'll be bringing him in here in just a couple minutes. He is the author of the Gogiver and knows a lot about being influential. And being influential is key to your success. So we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but I want to welcome everybody to the show. Let me know where you are watching from. And actually, I as much as I like the Christmas hat, I just got a new haircut and looking rather no, I don't want to say on fleek. That's horrible. Dapper. We'll just go with dapper, I must say. And so I'm going to leave the hat there. Also, before I bring Bob in, see that box right down there? That is the latest round. Well, that's one box. There's 20 of them. 19 have shipped to Amazon because these darn things just keep selling. People can't keep their hands off of them, and I'm reordering them and remanufacturing them faster and faster. If you haven't gotten yours yet, then kachingbutton.com is the place to go to go ahead and get one of those kaching buttons. These here are going out to influencers because in fact, Bob and I will talk about this because it's a smart way to get people talking about you and your product. Welcome, Vera, watching from Austria. Hi, Pat. Healthy, happy New Year to you as well. And a Merry Christmas. And glad that you guys are here again. This is Joel.LIVE, and this show does become a podcast. And we cut it to go right to the beginning of where the interview takes place. So all this preliminary stuff is just to let you guys know, hey, I'm here for you. And each week, although I will be taking off 2 weeks for the holiday, I will be disappearing off the face of the internet to have a much needed vacation. But please do share that we are live. Okay, with that, we're going to get started. Bob, you ready to get started? Nod your head. Bob is ready to get started. Okay, here we go. I believe that influence is the currency of business and this day and age. Influence is what moves people to take action, and you need to be influential in business if you want people to take action. I'm glad to have with me today an old friend. We've known each other quite a long time, and it's not that we're both old, but we are both friends. And although the gray hair might give away a few clues to exactly how old we are, he is the author of the best-selling book, The Gogiver, a fantastic parable about a little story with a persuasive idea. His name is Bob Burg. He's here with me on Joel.LIVE. Welcome, Mr. Bob. How are you?
Joel, I'm great. Did you actually point to your hair when you said gray?
Oh, well, let's get a close up so you can see what's happening here.
Oh, there's some gray. Oh, I get you there, but that's nothing compared to
you're using gray formula 44. You know what? I say go gray, right?
I have no problem with it.
I don't care what color it turns as long as it doesn't turn loose.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. And Hey, it kind of makes me look smarter than I am. So I'm a step ahead.
Well, you're humble, but you're kind of a big deal. And it's okay to be humble, but it's also okay to own your stuff. And you speak before audiences, large and small audiences, regularly. You talk, to thought leaders, to business leaders, to CEOs. You've even, I don't know who you shared the platform with, but your bio says a former U.S. president. So I want to know, who is that? Which president did you share
That
the platform with?
was former President Ford.
Is that right? So
Back
to
in the 90s when I was doing those big, the Peter Lowe, what are they called? I can't remember what they're called. Get Motivated shows.
Get Motivated, yeah.
Yeah, and the former president was on the circuit, so to speak.
Your book, The Gogiver, is highly influential. If you guys haven't read it yet, you need to pick up a copy of it. It's a quick read and it's a parable. Why don't you kind of summarize for those who are viewing now and will be watching the replay what The Gogiver is about?
Sure. Well, it is a parable. There's a series of them that we have out now. That was our first one, co-authored with John David Mann, who, for those who don't know John, he is just an absolutely brilliant writer. I'm much more, and Joel, you know me. As you said, we've been friends for a long time. I'm much more of a how-to. I'm step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4, that sort. John is an absolutely magnificent writer and storyteller. So the credit for how it reads goes to him. But it's really about a guy named Joe who's a young up and comer, good guy, but kind of has his focus in the wrong place. And really, the premise of the Go-Giver is simply that shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a nice way, a pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well.
And it's not rocket science, is it? I mean, this is something so I read that book, and I also read your book, Endless Referrals. And in that book, I came across the book through our mutual friend, Kevin Knebel. Because Kevin is a true go-giver, always seeking to bring value. He is like the role model for it, right? And he asked for me for my address, and he sent me a card. It was like an envelope letter size card that had a handwritten note on it, and it was pre-printed with info about him and contact information. And he wrote me a little handwritten note that just said, "I appreciate you," or "I like you," or something like that. And I thought, that is so cool. And I asked him where he came up with that idea. And he said it was from Bob Burg's book, Endless Referrals. So I went and did that same thing. And it's amazing how one little handwritten card,
absolutely,
stuffed in an envelope with a U.S. stamp sent to somebody, can make such an impact. Why is that?
Exactly. Well, I think for a couple of reasons. One, it's simply human nature that we want to feel thought about. We want to feel honored. We want to feel respected. And when someone, and this is back in the day, I wrote Endless Referrals before the internet was a thing, before it was mainstream. And even then, very few people did it. But when you could send a handwritten, personalized note to someone, just a short one, a note of thanks, they feel good about it. They feel good about the person who sent it. Well, now in today's day, where email and texting, of course, is so prevalent, now to get an actual handwritten note from someone has even more influence, has even more of an effect. So, sure, for the people who will do that, they'll see a fantastic return. And when I say return, I mean actually both business wise, but also just personally, in the type of strong connections they're able to make.
Yeah, let's try to quantify that effect. What happens to us emotionally, and connect that to business when we receive something as simple as a handwritten card from somebody that we've had some sort of contact with?
Well, it says, first of all, that this person has taken, it speaks about them, and it speaks about us, because it says to us, first of all, that if this person, and in Endless Referrals, I go through a series of what I call feel-good questions to ask that are very focused on the other person. Part of the Go-Giver way of doing things is to move from an I focus or me focus to an other focus, looking to bring value to others. Okay. And so when you ask questions of someone when you first meet them, it could be at a charity event, it could be at your kid's ball game, it could be at the local chamber or what have you. When you first meet someone and you ask them what they do, and you then ask them the feel good questions. How did you get started in the so-and-so, so-and-so? How did you get started as a office products professional? And people, you're asking them to tell their story, which no one else has asked them to do. Their own family hasn't asked them to share their story, right? But you have. Now you might ask them, what do you enjoy most about it? You know, it might sound more like, wow, you must have had some great experiences. What do you enjoy most about it? Then what I call the one key question, Joel, that will set you apart from everyone else, to ask this person, Dave or Mary, I always love connecting good people with other good people. How can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good prospective customer for you? So you're asking them these questions that totally show them that your goal is to bring value to their lives in a way that would be meaningful to them. Now you follow up after that with a personalized handwritten note that simply says, hi, Dave, or hi, Mary, thank you. It was such a pleasure meeting you at yesterday's event. If I can ever refer business your way, I certainly will. Well, it says to them about you that you're a pro. You know how to build a relationship, that you are competent in what you're doing. And we've all heard the saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. So they see you as being a real professional who they could trust to do a good job, either for them or someone they refer. But it also speaks to us about our need to feel acknowledged by another human being, and to feel acknowledged as someone as a person of value. So that's why, in and of itself, it's so very important. But, Joel, the whole Gogiver methodology, and when you said there's nothing complicated about it, you're absolutely, totally right. Nothing complicated about it. There's also nothing mystical or magical about it. It's not, just do good things and good. No, that's a good thing. That's a good way to live life. But being nice, being kind is not enough to make one successful. We all know plenty of people who we would describe as being simply nice people, who we would also have to describe as being simply broke people. So it's not that. Success is also a matter of doing the right things in the success process that allows a person to be successful and finish first. The reason why this other focus works so well is because, and I often say this when I begin to talk at a corporate event, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, and they're not going to buy from you even because you are the nicest person in the world and you believe in what you do. They're going to buy from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And the basically free market-based economy in which we live, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. That's the only reason why anyone should buy from you, and that's great, because it means the salesperson, the entrepreneur, must put their focus on pleasing that other person, which is why we say money is simply an echo of value.
So you're saying it's not about me?
No, I'm saying it's not about me. It's all about you.
It's not, though, and we get so caught up in what we do in business and making us think that it's about us, and it's not. It's about delivering value to others. Now, you have a new book that you've come out with, and that's what I really want to talk about now, called The Gogiver Influencer, a little story about a most persuasive idea. What's this one about? Can't wait to get my hands on it.
Oh, thank you. This one is about two people. One, her name is Jillian. She's the buyer for a big pet supply retailer. And then there is her opposite in this, a young entrepreneur, sort of a person who doesn't want to be an entrepreneur. It's just what he had to do, as he says, in order to get his product out into the world. He's a developer of healthy and great tasting cat food and dog food. And so the two of them are there to talk about whether the pet supply company should be carrying his line. It's a business marriage, Joel, that should be made in heaven. And it turns out to be anything but, because the two of them absolutely can't understand each other. They can't understand why the other thinks the way they do. And so they both find in this story, instead of one mentor and one protege, there are two mentors and two proteges. None of the proteges know they're being mentored, and neither of the mentors know that that they're mentoring the other one. And the two learn to communicate in a way that where 1 + 1 = 3, and they both get the results they want, which is the exact reason why John David Mann and I wanted to really focus on influence in this book.
And interestingly enough, this comes at a time where we are a very polarized society, right? Unfortunately, and for a variety of reasons, people are very split on what they want and what we want as a society. So what makes this book particularly timely?
Yeah. Well, it used to be, there were always disagreements, and this argued with this, and the left and the right and the here and the there and every but it used to be, I'm right, you're wrong, which, wasn't great. It wasn't a great way to do it anyway, but it was acceptable. Now it's, I'm right, you're evil. Okay. If you don't think the way I think, man, you're not just wrong. You're not just misguided. You have evil intent. And let's face it, if we really believe the other person has evil intent, there's no way we can engage with them. How can you can't engage with someone evil. And so really, I think the timeliness of this book is that we first have to understand that most people, and of course there are always outliers who really are, kind of nasty, yucky people, but right, by and large, most people, whether Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, and so forth, most people, they just want to be able to, and to have other people be able to live their lives, and to be able to seek happiness, and to be able to be prosperous and healthy. Now, the two sides have two totally different ways of believing the path, of which path should be taken. Absolutely. But by and large, both want the same end result. Okay. Freedom, happiness, a good life.
To be left alone, essentially, right? Let me live my life and do my thing and contribute the way I contribute, and leave me alone.
Exactly. And so, right. And so, so I think really what we've got to do, if we're going to be able to come together as a country made up of hundreds of millions of individuals, okay, we're going to have to know how, Nancy just wrote ahead, many people don't know how to politely disagree. Exactly. And one of the things we say is, too often people, they misinterpret, they confuse tact with compromising. And what I like to say is, you can always speak to people with tact, respect, and kindness without compromising your values. Okay. But we've got to be able to engage with people first, seeing them as human beings with positive intent, which again, most people have, even though it might seem difficult based on how wrong they are.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate. I'm just curious, by a show of hands, I'm going to have you guys vote here. Have you read The Gogiver? You should be able to vote here within the app, yes or no, and I'll be curious to see how this poll goes. So without giving away the story, because I don't want to have any spoilers here, I want to go to the point of the ideas in the book that can make somebody more influential. So let's, you don't have to give the whole farm away, because obviously we want people to go buy the book, but pick out some of the strategies that these characters discover to make them more influential, and as a result of being more influential, growing their business.
Sure. Well, the first principle, number one, of what we call genuine influence is to master your emotions. The sages wrote, "Who is mighty?" And they answered, that person who can control their own emotions and make of an enemy, or of a potential enemy, a friend. This is where it all begins, because it's only when you're in control of your own emotions, when you're in control of yourself, that you're even in a position to take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. We know this, right? And yet how often, Joel, do we allow someone, based on what they say or do, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, we allow them to push our emotional hot buttons, and we make ourselves sad or helpless or irritated or mad, right? And we say or do something that's totally counterproductive to our attaining the results we want. Well, the question is, if we know better, why do we do it? And the answer is, we're human beings. And as human beings, we are emotional creatures. We'd like to think we're logical, and to a certain extent, of course, we are, but we're pretty emotionally driven. We make major decisions based on emotion, and we back up those emotional decisions with logic. We rationalize, which simply means we tell ourselves rational lies. And so we need to get hold and be in control. Now, what we're not saying, what we're not suggesting is that you should forego your emotions or deny your emotions. Absolutely not. First, that would be contrary to human nature. We couldn't do it. But also, there's no reason to. Emotions are a wonderful part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worthwhile. No. Just make sure you're the master of your emotions as opposed to your emotions being the master of you. Or as one of my great friends, great leadership speaker and author, Dondi Scumaci puts it, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car.
What's Don's last name again?
Dondi, and her last name Scumaci.
Dondi, the Scumaci. It sounds such a thick Italian name. I love it. This is great, and I think that we as a society, from the time we're little with our education to as adults, we don't focus enough on emotional intelligence, the ability to process and manage our emotions in a healthy way so that we learn how to respond to people and situations rather than to react to them. This is why when I see people getting offended because something in the world they don't like, and I'm not talking about being offended by the fact that somebody's actually being hurt or harmed, right? We should be offended when somebody is physically hurt or harmed. But for those who just have their feelings hurt and they get offended because they don't like a song or a show or something somebody said, I look at those people and I think these are emotional children.
Well, the challenge, I think, is that we now have a situation where people are looking for reasons to be offended. Okay?
That offends me, Bob.
Yes, it offends me too. It makes me feel very unsafe that I even said that. I need a safe space. In fact, I think I'll take another sip of coffee. That's pretty safe.
There you go. I'll sip my water, courtesy of waterislife.com.
This show is brought to you by waterislife.com. Tax tag and title not included.
So controlling our emotions is a big deal. And, I recently had an encounter with an adult in his 50s who regularly reacts emotionally. The language comes out and it seems irrational. So the first step to being more influential is control your emotions. And do you think that is important because people have greater respect for those that are able to manage their emotions in a healthy way?
Yeah, first, people have much greater respect. Orson Swett Marden talked about that in his classic book, Peace, Power, and Plenty, back in, I think it was 1902. He talked about, there's no person who has more respect than that person who can really keep their wits about them, who is absolutely in control of themselves and control of the situation, especially when those around them are sort of panicky and losing control of their emotions. So yes, but we also have more respect for ourselves because we see that we can handle the situation. And
nice. Okay. So number one, learn to control your own emotions. What's number two?
This is to step into the other person's shoes. Now, this sounds very trite. Okay. And it is. It's something you've heard many, many times. Step into the other person's shoes. We go, well, that's pretty easy. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's not so easy when we consider the fact that most people have different sized feet. So literally, we can't step into the other person's shoes. Figuratively, we can't step into their minds. We can't step into their brains. We can't know what they're thinking and why. Because we, as human beings, we tend to see the world from our own set of beliefs. Beliefs are subjective truths. It's the truth as we understand the truth to be, which means it could be the truth, but more often than not, it's simply our truth. And again, it's just a belief. Our belief system is based on upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television, everything that comes, but it's pretty much set in stone at a pretty young age. Most of us grow up living through an unconscious operating system, believing that we're making conscious choices when really we're making decisions based on a very limited paradigm, if you will. But also, and here's the other step, the other thing, that we tend to think that other people see the world basically from the same belief system we do. I mean, how could it be any different? It's all we know. This is why, Joel, you often hear people saying things like, oh, everybody loves that. Or, oh, no one would want that. Or, well, I'd never treat someone that way. Well, no, we wouldn't, because it's not congruent with our belief system, but it doesn't mean it's the same for someone else. So the only way we can, and remember, all conflict is basically two or more people seeing the same thing from different points of view and not even realizing that. So what we need to do in order to step into another person's shoes is two things. First, ask questions. Second, listen. Listen not just with our ears. That's the surface listening most of us do. That's listening, waiting our chance to speak. That's letting them get in their 2 cents so that we'll be able to get in our 10 cents. Okay. So one of the mentors in the story advised their protege, listen not just with your ears, listen with your eyes, listen with your posture, listen with the back of your neck. In other words, put your entire being into listening to this person. When you do this, two great things happen. One is you actually begin to understand their thought processes. You understand why they're thinking what they're thinking, where they're coming from. Secondly, this person feels heard. They feel listened to. They feel understood, and that brings out trust. It brings out good feelings, and they're much more likely to buy into your idea. Joel, when you think about it, what is sales? Sales is simply discovering what the other person wants, needs, or desires and helping them to get it. The only way to do that is to ask the right questions and listen.
It's trite, but we hear it said many times that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? We should listen twice as much as we speak. But I've also read somewhere that understanding is the purpose of all communication. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, it's, without it, you can't have real communication. So here's the thing. Again, this comes down to belief systems. We often think we understand when we don't. Again, let's talk about sales or leadership. Either one, same thing, because the two are intertwined. It's believing that someone else's reason for doing a thing would be the same reason as yours, but it's usually not. I remember Dale Carnegie. To me, the underlying premise in Dale Carnegie's classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People, written about 80 years ago, was where he said, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So to me, the genuine influencer, what they do is they constantly ask themselves questions. First, to check themselves, to make sure that their focus is in the right place, on the other person, understanding them. That's why the questions we need to ask ourselves, how does what I'm asking this other person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their wants, their needs, their desires? How does what I want this other person to do align with their values? What problems of theirs is this solving? How is this making their life better? And when we ask ourselves these questions genuinely and authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we can ask these questions and we can understand what value we need to bring to them. And that's where influence really takes place.
You brought up a word there that I want to talk about for a moment. That was manipulation. It's said that there is a very fine line between manipulation and persuasion, and that manipulation is something you do to someone. Persuasion is something you do for someone. Is there any other distinguishing characteristics you could add to that?
I think the best explanation I ever heard of the difference, because I always intuitively understood the difference, but when people would ask, I never felt I explained it well. And the saying, if you can't explain it, simply you don't really understand it. So I constantly looked for better explanations than what I was given. And there was a book written in 1986 by Dr. Paul W. Sweats called The Art of Talking So That People Will Listen. But it was really more about listening than it was about talking. And I loved his explanation. He said, manipulation aims at control, not cooperation. Does not consider the good of the other party. It results in a win-lose situation. Then he goes on to say, in direct opposite to the manipulator, the persuader always seeks to enhance the self-esteem, and I'd add the position of the other person. The result is that people act responsibly because they're treated as responsible, self-directing individuals. Joel, a manipulator might not be intending to hurt the other person. That may not be their goal, but if that's what it takes to get the results they want, they'll do it because it's all about them. That could never happen with a persuader, because for a persuader, they've got to know that not only does the other person also come out ahead, but the other person feels good about it as well. That's why we say a manipulator can have employees, but not loyal team members. They can make the sale, but not have ecstatic customers and repeat customers and referral-based customers. Hey, a manipulator can have a family who they love and who loves them, but rarely a happy, functional family. So
would you agree that media, and I'm not singling out any particular source, is the greatest single source of manipulation that we have in our culture, in our world today?
Is it the greatest source of manipulation? Media, in many of its forms, has that ability to manipulate, okay? And to the degree the public will not think things through, the public can be manipulated. Now, say, are they the greatest source of it? Are they the main? I think there's a lot of people out there manipulating. There's a lot of people out there persuading. But obviously, the danger comes from manipulation. And I think in many ways, I think the media has a certain, whether it's on the left or the right, or whether it's this or that, isn't the point. But from whatever side they see the world, they have their biases, and that's how they communicate. Now, Bernard, I'm trying to think of his last name. He writes a column, and I just can't think of his last name, but he used to be on CBS, and then he wrote a book called Bias, which was about media bias. And I so apologize, I can't remember his name. But as he said, it's not that they necessarily do so purposely. Okay, it's that's how they see the world. They see the world through a very subjective lens, and that's
Bernard Goldberg, right?
Bernard Goldberg, of course.
Bias,
yeah. And he was right. I started out first in radio, then as a television broadcaster in a very small ABC affiliate, but it was the same back then as well. Okay, and so there's lots of media bias, whether it's from the left or the right or what have you, and they report through their own personal biases because they're human beings. However, I would also say it's gotten a lot worse than it used to be, because there's more competition for eyeballs now, and it's really the line has been blurred between even people describing themselves as journalists and opinion people. Remember back when we were growing up, Joe, and I hate to bring that back when we were growing up, but
long time ago when we used to have to walk 20 miles to get bandwidth.
Actually, mine was 15, right? Yeah, but you're right, 20 miles to get bandwidth. Walter Cronkite, okay, who was back when I was growing, he was the anchor, right? He was, America's anchor, basically.
I'm Walter Cronkite, and this is the news.
You never knew what his political leanings were. Now, it came out after he died that he was very, very much on the political left, but no one knew that. How much does that say about him in a very good way? Okay, that he was able to keep his own biases out. And yet today, I think you can look at pretty much any broadcaster and you can pretty much tell where they're coming from.
Right.
So
well,
yeah.
And there are major stories happening in the world that intentionally do or don't get covered. Real news that's taking place that for whatever reason, some people don't want us to see. And I find that manipulation reprehensible. But anyway.
Can I suggest something?
Sure.
And I suggest this to people all the time. Okay. And that's this. If you are on the progressive left, let's say, watch Fox News sometimes. Okay. If you are on the conservative, watch MSNBC sometimes. And by the way, don't watch them just to denigrate them. Don't watch them just to see where they're wrong. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but don't watch them just to, and don't look at if you are an MSNBC watcher, don't look. I'm not talking about watching Fox through the clips they use, because those are very, edited clips with an agenda. Right. And if you're a Fox viewer, don't watch it. When I say watch MSNBC, don't watch the 30-second clips they show you there, because that's through a filter. I'm saying really watch the other side, if you will. Again, not to agree with them, but to understand them and ask yourself questions. Why do they think what they think? And leave out the part because they're evil human beings. Okay, leave that out. There's a wonderful book that Jonathan Haidt, it's spelled like hate, but it's pronounced Haidt, wrote several years ago called The Righteous Mind. It is the best book I have ever written on how you can understand both the political left and the political right and why they think the way they do. And I suggest to you that if you'll read that book, you'll come away understanding that both sides are filled with good people. You don't have to agree with the other, right? And so once we start, and so the few times I watch TV, I'm not a big TV watcher, but I'll go from Fox to CNN to MSNBC. And I'm going to tell you something, just as you were alluding to, you see the same story told from two different points of view. It's like you're watching two different stories.
Absolutely.
And that's a shame. I don't care who their audience is, they should be reporting as opposed to deciding and making the news. But, again, that's the world as it is. And that's why we wrote the book, in order for us to be able to understand the world, understand human nature, and work within it in order to become that influencer that you want to be.
Adding The Righteous Mind to my
you're gonna absolutely love this book. Professor Haidt is brilliant. I started following him on Twitter, and he's really doing a lot of good things in terms of trying to bring the sides together and getting dialogue going.
See, I love where this conversation has gone. Let's do one more tip on how to be more influential. We talked, number one was learn to control your emotions. Number two, step into the other person's shoes. What would number three be?
That would be set the proper frame. What is a frame? Well, a frame is the foundation from which everything else evolves. May I share with you my favorite frame story?
Please do.
Okay, so I'm at a Dunkin' Donuts store where I'm often at, usually drinking coffee and reading, every so often having a donut, but trying not to as much as possible. So there's a little boy, he's about 2 years old, 2.5 years old, a little toddler. He's running around the restaurant when his parents call him over to the table. He starts walking to the table when suddenly he takes a spill and he slips on the floor. He didn't hurt himself, you could tell, but you could also tell he was very confused. This was not within his world of understanding, his experience. The first thing he does is he looks over at his mom and dad, of course, to get their interpretation of the event. In other words, what happened. He wanted to know, okay, mom and dad, what comes next? Is this a good thing, a bad thing? You know what? Well, Joel, I truly believe that had the parents gotten upset and panicky and, run over. Oh no, my poor baby, are you okay? He'd have started crying. But they handled it just beautifully. They walked over quickly, but very calmly and serenely. They smiled, they laughed, they applauded. They said, "Oh, what a good trick. That looked like so much fun." And he immediately began to laugh. What the parents did is they created the proper frame from which he could operate. Okay. I often say, create the proper frame in your 9 steps there in a 10-step game, right? And so we can do this in any conversation when we meet someone. It can be something as simple as our smile, or the way we greet them, or the first words we say, how we create the context for their being comfortable. The challenge, Joel, is what do you do if the other person comes to the table in an already negatively set frame? So let's say, for instance, we're talking about a selling situation. The person's name is Mary, who's the prospect, and she kind of seems a little defensive, a little unhappy. She tells you, "Hey, I'm not some easy sell, and I'm not sure if I'm going, whatever." And so for whatever reason, now we can't really start asking her questions yet to find out why, because we're not even at that point yet. Assuming she doesn't know us, we don't know her. This is the first time we're meeting her. But what we can do is make a decision not to buy into that frame, because if we do that, then we're defensive and we're upset. And now you've got two people kind of adversarial. So let's immediately reset the frame. So we might say to her, "Mary, while we've been able to help a lot of people with this product, whether it's the right fit or the right answer for you, we simply can't know without exploring deeper and discovering whether it meets your specific needs. So please know our conversation is for both of us to determine that. And if it does, great. If not, that's okay too." So now we've immediately taken this from adversarial to 2 allies just looking to collaborate and discover what's best for her, which is what the sale is all about anyway.
So without going into depth on some of the other points on being more influential that people learn from the book, just kind of bullet point them for me.
Well, the next one is communicate with tact and empathy. Basically, my dad defines tact as the language of strength, which really, I think, what it is. It's
being the diplomat.
Yeah, it's communicating an idea to someone, Joel, in a certain way, an idea they may not want to hear, but doing it in such a way that rather than their being defensive toward you and resistant to your ideas, they're open to you and more accepting of your ideas. That's really what tact is all about. The 5th one is to let go of having to be right. Now, this doesn't mean you don't want to be right. It doesn't mean you're not going to prepare to be right. It means you're going to let go of the emotional attachment to having to be right, or having to be 100% right, or having to be 100% right about everything. And when you let go of this attachment to having to be right, 2 wonderful things happen. One, you're able to go into learner's mode. Okay? You're able to look at something in a different way with an open mind. Again, doesn't mean you have to accept it as fact, not at all, but you're open to it. This, as opposed to the person whose attitude is basically, my mind's made up, don't confuse me with the facts. Okay? And we see this so often.
All the time.
Right. So when you have that openness to not having to be right, you both learn more, but also when this person who you're dealing with realizes, and they will very quickly, that you're someone who's not just looking to be right, not just looking to be right by making them wrong, but you're looking for truth. Now they feel a lot better about you. They are more trusting of you, and they're much more likely to be willing to buy into your idea and influence.
I love that. And isn't a corollary to that needing to letting go of the right to be understood, to say, I respect and honor your right to think, feel, believe, and perceive however you want, and go do your thing.
Exactly. That's, is that really, when you think about it, that's the highest form of consciousness. Just simply accepting of for everyone to be able to live their lives and pursue happiness however they see fit, providing they don't infringe upon the rights of anyone else to do the same.
A book that I read a number of years ago from a pastor in California really revolutionized how I saw that. His name is Danny Silk, and it's all about creating a culture of honoring one another, and what that means and how that creates healthy boundaries for ourselves. And it's funny because it's so simple, and yet when I talk to people about it, they're like, that's so wise. I'm like, but it's kind of common sense. We create a space that protects good things and keeps bad things out and allows other to live their lives. Again, as long as we're not harming or hurting somebody else physically, then I think, we're in a pretty respectable space.
Absolutely.
Bob, I really, really appreciate, especially, it's kind of short notice for you to come on and talk about this today. The book, which I'm going to put up here on screen, I'm going to recommend that everybody go grab a copy of this, the Gogiver Influencer. Of course, if you haven't read the original Gogiver, if you go to Bob's site here, and the URL for that is Burg.com. There you go. And you click on books, you'll see all of his books here. Mitch Jackson was here, and he said Adversaries and the Allies was, a pivotal book for him. Endless Referrals. Again, what that makes me want to do is update my card. You inspire me, Bob, to go, okay, maybe it's time for a new card with new, my new contact info and the things I'm doing now and how I could help people and start sending those out again. And it takes an effort. It really does, but it's worth it.
Well, I think anything good takes effort, and and again, that's just that culture that we just want it to happen now and with no effort. Well, that's not real world. That's not the way it is. So
any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with today?
Joel, one of the best lessons I ever learned, it was about 35 years ago. I had been in sales for a few years, and I'd done well, but I wasn't anywhere near close to reaching my potential, just like Joe in the original story in the Gogiver, right? And I remember coming back from a non-selling appointment because I didn't do what I should have to be able to understand how to communicate to the customer. And I remember one of these kind of like wise older men and when I say older men, I'm probably my age, now, but back then, this was a long time ago. And he said to me, "Burg, can I give you some advice?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Please do. I need it." And he said, "If you want to make a lot of money in business," actually, he said, "if you want to make a lot of money in sales," he said, "don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. When you hit the target," he said, "you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget," he said, "the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. The target is serving others." And I think
on that note, that is that's period, paragraph. Let that sit there, gang. The target is it's not just, it's serving, it's honoring, it's giving, it's blessing. It's as long as the focus is not on you and on others. We are not here just to live our lives and get all we can and die with the most toys. That's ridiculous. We are here because we are gifted individuals, and those gifts are ours so that we can use them to bless others.
Love it.
Bob, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it. I'm going to drop you down here to the lobby, but if you'll stick around for just a moment, I'm going to wrap things up here. And thank you to all of you. I hope that you got good stuff out of there, because that was good stuff. Some of these real simple principles are profound. And if you implement them in your life, not just in your business, but as a way of life, business and life are not two separate things. Your business and who you are in business is a subset of your life. It's an extension of your life. Be who you are, whether you are on stage or off stage. Be the person that you would want to honor in others. thanks again for watching. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, well, then Merry whatever your thing is. And we'll catch you guys on Joel.LIVE after the new year. I'll be taking a couple breaks from the official show in order to have some much needed downtime. But until then, you guys go ahead, go out there and do good stuff.